I never imagined my struggle as a single dad would lead to rescuing a beaten mother and her child. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. My heart raced as rain poured down, making the world outside my car feel gray and bleak. I had just finished a long shift, and my fingers trembled on the steering wheel, aching for the warmth of home. Then, I saw her. A woman, soaked to the bone, standing on the side of the road. Her eyes were wild, darting like a trapped animal. I pulled over, the engine coughing to a halt. Was she lost? In trouble? Suddenly, something in her expression gripped my heart. It was fear, deep, suffocating fear. I felt it wrapping around me like a chokehold. As she approached, I could see the fresh bruises blooming on her arms. The skin looked tender, angry. She had a child, too, hiding behind her thin frame, peering out with wide, frightened eyes. My heart broke for them. What had they gone through? I would never know the whole story. Please, she gasped, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf in the wind. I need help. Every fiber of my being wanted to reach out, to pull her into the safety of my car, yet instinct warned me. There was something ominous lurking beneath her words, something that made my gut twist. I offered her my coat, even as I felt the weight of hesitation pressing down on me. Shadows of doubt flitted around us. Who was this woman? What was she running from? I could see the tears pooling in her eyes, reflecting a pain I wished I could soothe. Suddenly, a shadow moved behind her, a threat. The atmosphere shifted, sparks crackled in the air. I felt my muscles tense. Her eyes widened in horror. No, please, don't, she shouted, and my heart plummeted. The child whimpered, clinging to her leg, terrified. A dark figure emerged, lightning in the storm, and my pulse quickened. I couldn't just sit there. I swung open the car door, adrenaline surging. I didn't know what I was confronting, but I could feel the weight of fear pressing down, and that was enough to push me into action. With every heartbeat, I stepped forward. Would this be the day everything changed? Fear clawed at me as I stood there, the torrential rain mingling with my uncertainty. Was I a savior or just another fool? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air crackled with tension, each raindrop a reminder of the urgency pressing down on me. As I stepped forward, I felt like I was walking into a storm, a tempest of choices and consequences swirling around us. The woman, her breath hitching, faced the approaching shadow, a mix of fear and fierce determination illuminating her eyes. Please, not again, she pleaded, her voice quaking. I could see her muscles tightening, resolve battling against the panic clawing at her throat. The child, no more than 6 or 7, peered up at her, sensing the dread that permeated our surroundings. My heart ached as I contemplated the depth of this nightmare. They had already faced too much. The figure, cloaked in darkness, advanced. With every step, 1,000 questions barreled through my mind. What kind of monster could haunt them to this degree? What unseen barriers had pushed them to seek refuge in a stranger's car? I took a deep breath and, in that moment, made a decision fueled by a mother's vulnerability and a child's innocence. I had to be their shield, their guiding light amid the tumult. You need to get in the car. Now. My voice echoed louder than the rain, cutting through the chaos. The woman hesitated, her eyes flicked back to the growing figure behind her, battling against the instinct to run or fight. But the child tugged on her coat, and in that small gesture, I saw the glimmer of hope, igniting her will to act. The shadowy figure stopped, sizing me up with a predatory gaze. You don't want to get involved, buddy, he warned, a smirk curling his lips. But in that bastard's arrogance, I saw the traces of fear too, the essence of a man threatened by someone willing to stand up to him. I held my ground. Let them go. Whatever this is between you, it ends here. As the words left my mouth, the woman wrapped her arms around her child, pulling him close, creating a barrier against the world. Please, she whispered, tears cascading down her cheeks. mingling with the relentless rain. Just get in the car. We can make it. There was an unspoken connection among us, a fragile bond forged in desperation. The very air vibrated with the tension between confrontation and escape, hope and despair. I could see the flicker of trust entering her eyes, illuminating her resolve. The child, emboldened by his mother's strength, stepped forward, taking her hand. But just as they began to approach the car, the figure lunged forward, a menacing grin blossoming as he reached for her. I reacted instinctively, stepping in between them. The trepidation bubbled inside me, but I pushed it down. I wouldn't let fear dictate my actions. The confrontation escalated in an instant, a whirlwind of shouts and chaos. The woman screamed, clutching her child tighter, as adrenaline coursed through my veins. I swung at the dark figure, the striking sound reverberating in the storm, but he was quicker, dodging my blow and retaliating with rough force. As the struggle unfolded, I felt the small embers of hope fading, battling against overwhelming odds. Would I truly be able to protect them? But then, something unexpected happened. A flash of movement nearby. A man, soaked and shivering yet resolute, stepped in, joining my side. Without a word, he grabbed the frightened mother's arms and pulled her towards the car, while I kept the brute at bay. Go. Now, he shouted, urgency lacing his tone. With a jolt of courage spurred by fresh resolve, she pressed onward, her child safely shielded at her side. I could only hope they made it as I pushed back against the looming darkness, the figure still advancing with fury in his eyes, no longer just a threat, but a manifestation of all her fears. Just as I thought we could escape, the man from the shadows threw a wicked punch, and my world spun wildly. Pain erupted in my side, knocking the breath from me. I stumbled, and panic surged in my chest. But before I could sink to my knees, a strange clarity swept over me. Scanning the scene, I could see the mother now inside the car, her child gripping her tightly, eyes wide. Would she take this chance to flee? And then, through the swirling storm and chaos, the haunting sound of a siren pierced the night, the distant promise of help. But would it arrive before it was too late? The answer would spell the difference between life and death for all of us. As I struggled to remain standing, the truth hit me like a bolt of lightning. I'd never known how powerful a desperate situation could reveal a person's worth. But as I felt the darkness closing in on me, I realized this moment was but a prelude to a much larger storm gathering on the horizon. Would we escape the past, or was it destined to catch up with us? The future lay in the balance, shrouded in uncertainty as everything began to slip away, leaving nothing but questions simmering in the depths of an unyielding storm. The sharp sound of the siren blended with the relentless downpour, a symphony of urgency that reminded me of the fragility of life in this tumultuous moment. Struggling against the pain radiating from my side, I watched as the mother's face transformed from terror to the fragile glow of hope as she gripped the steering wheel, her determined gaze fixated on the opening between us and the escaping threat. But the figure was relentless, his eyes wild with rage, clawing to reassert control of the situation. I had to buy them time. I felt frustration welling inside, fueled by the dichotomy of emotions raging within me. Fear for the woman and her child, and a burning need to shield my own vulnerabilities. In an act of sheer desperation, I lunged forward, kicking the figure's feet out from under him. For a moment, he faltered, a knife-thin opportunity appearing in the chaos. Go, I shouted hoarsely, my voice cracking under the weight of anguish and strength. The mother hesitated, her instincts battling with desperation. Then the moment stretched, a canvas painted in shades of heartache and determination, her child calming beside her, as if sensing the vital decision resting in her hands. You have to trust me, I urged, my heart racing alongside the rain pelting against the car. And just like that, she turned, the car door slamming shut, sealing in her dreams of escape and freedom as she revved the engine. My gaze darted back to the figure scrambling to regain his footing, anger, tinged with a hint of desperation, simmered beneath his simmering sneer. Look at what you've done, he spat, his voice a low growl. You think this ends here? You think you've won? Shivers of dread crawled down my spine. Something darker loomed beneath his words. But I had little time to ponder his threats. With raw, untamed energy, I launched myself toward him again, adrenaline coursing like fire through my veins. This time, I delivered a blow to his jaw, the impact dizzying as I felt the sting in my knuckles. He staggered back. The sirens grew louder, illuminating our surroundings with faint flashes of blue and red. I could taste the bittersweet victory on my lips as I grabbed my side, pushing through the agony. But then, through the stormy haze, I caught sight of the woman and her child up ahead. My heart soared, threading warmth through the cold fear that had gripped me. They were slipping away, leaving me behind to sow the seeds of salvation for another's misery. Yet, even as hope surged through me, the figure lunged again, a sharp, volatile force, crashing against my shoulder and knocking me off balance. I collided with the pavement. The world blurred. Pain surged as the rain painted the ground a reflective silver, transforming my struggle into a frail dance with darkness. But amidst the chaos, I could still hear the whirring engine of the car, the steady beat of the child's innocent heart urging his mother to drive, to escape. The wailing sirens grew closer. It was now or never. Fighting to regain my footing, I caught a glimpse of the mother exchanging a worried glance with her child, uncertainty clouding her features. "Don't look back," I bellowed, desperation piercing through my voice. With a shuddering exhale, I pressed to stand tall again, forcing my knees to lift under the weight of a haunting realization. We were entangled in something larger than the moment, something menacing lingering in the background, preparing to engulf us all. And then, in the distance, I saw flickering lights. The police had arrived. The shadowed figure paused, releasing a low, menacing laugh. A chill enveloped me as the glint of a weapon flashed in his hand. "You may have saved them today, but they will never truly be free," he hissed, a sense of foreboding cloaking his words like the thickening storm clouds above. Caught in the tense moment of truth, the words stung with heavy clarity. What lay ahead of us? Could she find safety? Or was this merely the beginning of a relentless pursuit? Suddenly, bright headlights illuminated the scene, the arrival of law enforcement bringing a flicker of hope. But my heart was still heavy, knowing that the darkness threatened to seep into every corner of our lives, haunting us long after this encounter. As the officers rushed closer, I turned one last time to the mother's car, just in time to see her slip into the shadow of the road, the darkness enveloping them completely, tearing a crack in my heart. Would she ever feel truly safe? As the figure vanished in the storm of night, the chilling thought punctured my mind. Not everyone could escape the shadows that followed them. Somewhere within the storm, a battle still raged. Would this tumultuous journey leave us scarred forever? Or could we find the strength to face the darkness lurking beyond the horizon? The rain had lessened, but its remnants clung to the streets, merging with the scent of asphalt and fear. As I lay there, breathless with aching ribs, I could hardly distinguish the sound of my heartbeat from the distant wail of sirens. The adrenaline had begun to fade, replaced by a disquieting stillness that hung heavily in the air. "Stay down," a police officer shouted, tugging me by the shoulder, his eyes scanning the darkness for threats still lurking. I could barely nod, my mind frantically racing back to the woman and her child. They were free now, but at what cost? Once the chaos began to settle, I pushed myself onto my elbows, the grim reality of my injuries settling like a cold weight upon my chest. I caught glimpses of lights bouncing off police vehicles as officers swarmed the scene, but the glow that illuminated my surroundings felt hollow. My heart ached with despair, the image of her determined face indelibly etched into my mind, beacon of strength and love amidst the storm. Spluttering with effort, I bombarded the police with my thoughts. A desperate wave of confusion crested as I tried to recollect every detail. "Did you see where they went?" "The woman, the child," my voice cracked, and exhaustion seeped through my words. I had fought not just for my own safety but for theirs, a battle that should have ended with their deliverance. "There's nothing we can do right now," an officer replied, his face a mask of professionalism, yet a flicker of empathy softened his gaze. "Well, file a report, and we can launch a search," but I shook my head, resisting the comfort he offered. "You don't understand. They're not just lost in the rain. They're running from something far worse. The Manha knew them. You have to find them before he does." The rising tide of dread clutched at my throat, constricting around the very breath that sustained me. "Sir, please, Take a moment to breathe. We'll do everything we can, but you need to rest for now." The officer stepped back, nodding toward the paramedics who had arrived, their expressions steadily shifting between concern and urgency. "Rest?" I spluttered incredulously. "They could be in danger right now. You don't know what he's capable of." Suddenly, I was swept into a whirlpool of darkness, where memories of my own past reverberated the feeling of vulnerability, helplessness, and the terrifying uncertainty of losing those you love. As they bundled me into an ambulance, I caught one last glimpse of the rain-soaked street, the jagged marks of chaos left behind merging and morphing with the remnants of my heartache. I wanted nothing more than to be stitched back together, to feel whole and comfortable again. But some wounds run far too deep for mere bandages. In the confines of the ambulance, for lines tangled like vines, I found semblances of hope in the pages of my own memory moments spent cradling my child, sharing laughter that echoed through our home. The warmth of that love started to bloom, flickering as brightly as it had once done during those golden days. Yet as the sirens wailed softly, a gut-wrenching fear clung to those moments. It was a potent reminder that danger lurked just beyond the safety of walls and familiar streets. What shadows would haunt them now? Could she protect her child from what lay in wait? Or would they too find themselves entrenched in darkness? The paramedic's voice broke through my thoughts, gentle but firm, guiding me back to reality. "You've taken a hard hit, but you're going to be okay. Let's get you cleaned up and checked over." I tried to focus on his words, tearing my mind from the futile search for safety in a world riddled with shadows, where protection felt as delicate as the beating wings of a dying bird. Despite my connection to the mother and her child, my heart was still burdened with the fragility of Liffey, a treacherous tightrope that could very well lead to despair. I slumped against the stretcher, surrendering to the exhaustion that engulfed me. The throbbing reminder of my own helplessness settled in the pit of my stomach. An unshakable thought haunted me. What if I never saw them again? Would their paths intertwine with mine once more, or had destiny cruelly severed that fragile thread? Then, through the dim light of the ambulance, my phone buzzed with a new message that shattered the quiet urgency around me. My heart leaped painfully as I grappled for the device, a mix of dread and hope swelling in my chest. What if it was news of the woman? What if it was the beginning of something beyond my control, but tethered to their fate? With shaking fingers, I opened the message, and the chill coursed through me like a winter wind, turning hope into ice as I read the chilling words that lay before me. Something sinister had surfaced, and along with it, the revelation that the shadows had a name, one that would plunge me deeper into an emotional taunt that could drag us all into the depths of despair. The ambulance's interior felt like a claustrophobic cocoon, compressing my thoughts like a vice. The hum of machinery surrounded me, but all I could hear was the echo of the message, repeating itself in an ominous loop. It was just one line, but it felt as if my entire world had been upended. The sender's name pulled a scream from the depths of my soul, a name I hadn't heard in years, yet it reverberated like a haunting melody I couldn't escape. "Dad, he's coming for you." It said. It was from my sister, the one who always sensed the brewing storms from a distance. From where I lay, the shadows of my past loomed larger than life, blocking out any flickers of hope that had dared to emerge. Why had she chosen now to return? What demons of our shared childhood had resurfaced to drag us both back into the darkness? As the ambulance sped through the glistening streets, my breathing turned ragged with anxiety. I swallowed hard, trying to shove down the rising tide of panic. What did she mean? Who was coming? Was this man I had helped escape from a greater danger than I had realized? The paramedic noticed my distress and placed a calming hand on my arm. "Breathe, just breathe," he instructed. His eyes held a kindness I desperately sought, but it collided violently with the fear spiraling through my mind. I nodded, trying to wrap my thoughts around the pieces that seemed to scatter with each labored breath. Once we arrived at the hospital, the sterile smell of antiseptic washed over me like a bucket of cold water. They whisked me away, subjecting me to the bright overhead lights and the worried looks of nurses and doctors bustling around like a hive in alarming disarray. Each face passed by felt like a reminder of my own fragility, the constant awareness of my vulnerability in a world that felt all too perilous. "Have you made contact with the woman?" I managed to ask between their questions about my symptoms and pain levels. I could feel my heart pounding fear mixed with the potent need to ensure her safety. In the chaos of tending to my injuries, I felt the weight of uncertainty sink into the marrow of my bones. No contact yet, but we're filing a report, one of the doctors replied, his voice somewhat comforting, yet distant. Meanwhile, my mind drifted back to the message, its implications crawling back into my consciousness like a phantom I could not shake off. After a barrage of examinations, the oppressive atmosphere began to weigh down on me. I willed my phone to buzz again, but it remained stubbornly silent, mirroring the growing dread in my heart. Perhaps it was a signal to start preparing for what might come next, for the storm brewing on the horizon. A few scant minutes of silence was shattered when the shrill ring of my phone broke through the lingering stillness. It was my sister, and as I answered, her voice was strained, tangled in threads of worry. You need to listen closely. I don't have long. There are things you don't remember, things I've kept hidden. You think you've dealt with it all, but he's never truly gone. Her breath came in fits, as if the enormity of her words threatened to collapse under their weight. Who? What are you talking about? I demanded, frustration and fear causing my voice to rise. My heart raced, racing against a past that had threatened my family once before. Is it about the woman and her child? Is he running after them? There was a long pause, during which I feared she wouldn't respond. Then finally came her shaky breath, laced with emotion. He's looking for another way back in. I think they might be connected to something you buried long ago. You need to get to them first, before he does. Don't let history repeat itself. Every word struck me like shards of glass, piercing and painful. What did you keep hidden? What are you saying? This is about my family. You can't just throw these shadows back in my face without explaining. The sobering truth seeped into my bones, leaving me cold and alone amid the chaos surrounding me. That I want to help you, but we must tread carefully, she urged, her voice shaky and uncertain. The moment you started interfering, you stirred something dark. Focus on the woman and her child. Find them before he finds you. The line went dead then, as if the connection to my past had been severed. In the sterile confines of my hospital room, the void that hovered beneath my skin turned into a heavy weight of guilt and dread. A gnawing feeling consumed me. Could I truly fight against a monster that had haunted my family for generations? With a resolve ignited within me, I slipped off the bed and ignored the pain that shot through my torso as I staggered towards the exit. I had to find them. I had to protect them. The stakes had risen dangerously high, and in the darkness surrounding their plight, I felt the shadows coil around me once more. I stepped outside. A fading sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and blood red. But as I glanced around the empty parking lot, I felt the icy fingers of fear scratch along my spine. I was not alone. Someone was watching. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. Glancing over my shoulder, I saw a figure retreat into the night, cloaked by the shadows, leaving behind a chilling sense of foreboding. My heart pounded louder than the sirens that had followed me here, leaving me standing at the edge of a new precipice of fear, poised helplessly between the past that refused to remain dead and the uncertain future that loomed ominously ahead. The storm was closer than ever, and with it, I could only brace myself for the struggles that would come, knowing that this battle was far from over. The chill of the evening air wrapped around me as I stepped into the parking lot, each shiver reminding me of the urgency coursing through my veins. Panic surged anew, and I forced myself to focus on the task before me. I had to find the woman and her child. The shadowy figure had disappeared, but the lingering presence of fear made my skin crawl. With a mix of adrenaline and trepidation, I stumbled toward my car, clutching the phone tightly, its silence now deafening. That I took a moment to catch my breath, leaning against the cool metal of my vehicle, my mind racing through a tangle of memories. Fragments of my past collided with visions of the future, dark moments intertwined with fleeting glimpses of hope. Flashes of laughter from my sister and me as children danced defiantly against the dread, but each memory was tainted by the darkness lurking just beneath the surface. Grasping for clarity, I turned the engine over. The familiar rumble resonated like a lifeline, grounding me even as my emotions roamed wild. I needed to reach out to my sister again, to seek more answers, but her words echoed back, Tread carefully. What did she know that I did not? With a heavy heart, I pushed the thoughts away. There was no time to waste, and I drove through the city, using the last words I had from my sister as a compass, piecing together the puzzle of his return and what it might mean for the woman and her child. The flickering streetlights streamed past, illuminating the streets carved into my neighborhood, and anxiety tightened its grip. Each passing face behind the glass seemed like a potential ally, or worse, a foe. After what felt like an eternity, I reached the small apartment complex where the woman had sought refuge, its brick facade dulled by time and hardship. I parked hastily, the engine still sputtering as I climbed out and rushed towards the entrance. It was eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of a television playing somewhere inside. As I knocked on the door, my heart thundered, a cacophony of doubt and determination battling within me. Silence lingered before I raised my hand to knock again. But just then, I heard Ida's soft voice, a child's giggle, puncturing the air. It was like a beacon of light piercing through the darkness. I felt a rush of warmth. Hope flooded back to me. But against that warmth, icy fear clutched at my heart yet again. Was it truly safe here? Did the woman know the danger that stalked behind her memories as intimately as I did? Mommy. The voice giggled again, drawing me closer. Then came the soft sound of the door unlatching. The woman stood before me, weariness etched into her features, yet her eyes sparkled with a fierce protective instinct. The moment I saw her, I knew she had fought battles too, her spirit bearing scars akin to my own. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice carrying a weight of urgency, anxiety knitting her brows. I opened my mouth to answer, but before words could form, I caught a glimpse of the small child tugging at her skirt. "I can't know I'm here." "Listen," I pleaded, drawing her attention back to my determined gaze. "There's something you need to know. The threats you faced aren't over. Someone is looking for you. We need to leave." Panic flickered briefly in her eyes before she steeled herself, looking down at the child clinging to her leg. "I can't just take him and run. He needs stability. You don't understand the past, it never really leaves. The walls have eyes," and her voice dropped lower, trembling. "I thought I was safe here. I need to keep him safe. Your past is catching up to you, and keeping still isn't an option," I urged, each word laced with urgency. "If I didn't come here, I don't know what could have happened. We have to prepare. We can't let history repeat itself." In response, she stepped back, her expression shifting from resolve to worry as shadows danced behind her instincts. "You don't know anything about my past. You don't realize how connected we all are. Then enlighten me," I snapped, frustration escaping like steam from a boiling pot. I had come too far to turn back now, and the child's innocence hung in the balance between us. "If you don't trust me, at least trust the fear that drives us. This danger is real." Sudden footsteps echoed in the corridor, heavy and purposeful, slapping against the concrete floor. My stomach dropped, and recognition of impending dread cracked open like a wound. "Please," she whispered, barely audible. "We need to hide." Before I could even nod, the door swung open further, and there stood a figure I had not expected to see. Me, sister, her face lined with desperation and fear, holding a letter in her trembling hands. "I was looking for you. You have to see this." But as she stepped in, my heart raced faster, the shadows coiling tighter, instinct telling me there was no way out of this storm. We were already ensnared in its grip, and the tide was turning. The three of us stood on the edge of a new, uncharted conflict, with my sister's revelation poised to unravel everything I thought I knew. I felt the air thicken as tension mounted, the silent acknowledgement of shared fears amplifying the uncertainty of what lay ahead. In that moment, standing between two women I desperately wanted to protect, I realized the stakes had never been higher, and the real battle was just beginning. The air thickened with unsaid words as I processed the sight of my sister, her presence a mixture of familiarity and piercing concern. The dwindling light outside cast long shadows, creeping into the corners of the small apartment and amplifying our collective fear. I could see it in my sister's eyes. She was as terrified as I was, caught in the crossfire of a brewing tempest. "Please, what's going on?" The woman interrupted, her voice taut with anxiety. She was clutching her child closer, pressing him protectively against her side. "I didn't realize you were here," My sister's voice trembled slightly as she addressed me, her gaze flickering between the woman and the child, assessing, understanding, putting pieces together in real time. But you need to read this. She thrust the letter toward me, her hands shaking ever so slightly. The woman's eyes were wide with suspicion, a telltale sign of the battles she had faced. "What is it?" she asked, her voice edged with defensiveness. Pushing back against the unknown that loomed just out of sight. "It could be vital," I said, trying to flip through my mind the memories of my sister and her penchant for digging deep into family history, often unearthing darker truths. Grabbing the letter, I quickly unfolded it, my heart racing in tandem with my thoughts about our uncertain fate. As I read the words slashed across the page, a growing dread settled in the pit of my stomach. The letter revealed connections between our family's truths that twisted in ways I had never anticipated. It was a letter from our late mother, written to me and my sister, but also revealing a hidden connection to the woman before us. They were intertwined in a way that made the very essence of our realities tremble. "I can't believe this," I muttered, struggling to keep my voice steady as I processed the shocking revelations. But I hesitated, unable to finish the sentence. Instead, I looked up to see my sister's ashen face. "Family," she whispered, her eyes reflecting both disbelief and a creeping dread. "Somehow, we are family." The woman's expression shifted, narrowing her eyes into a mix of fury and disbelief. "You think that changes anything? You think because we share a bloodline, your family didn't hurt mine? This is messed up. Let me explain," I urged, feeling the walls closing in as she took a step back, her stance defensive once again. The little boy clung tighter to her, his innocent confusion eking out a fresh wave of guilt. I didn't want him to feel fear for a single second longer than necessary. Yet here we were, a storm of emotions swirling all around. "I don't want to be part of this twisted drama you call family," she snapped, referring to the revelation like it was some dreadful disease. "I'm already fighting for my son's life. I don't need this." My sister interjected, her voice softening. "You're not alone in this. We're connected somehow, and maybe that means we can help each other." Just then, a loud crash erupted from the hallway outside, like shattering glass punctured the air with an exclamation mark of terror. My heart dropped as I swung around, the sudden noise igniting my flight instincts. Whatever was outside was urgent and dangerous, and there was no time to waste. "Run!" I shouted before even realizing the command had escaped my lips. The woman's eyes flared with fear as she reached out, grasping my arm tightly. Her fingers were trembling. Where can we go? I can't risk having him see this. If he knows." I glanced at my sister, who nodded as if she had also made a decision in that split second. "The back door leads to the alleyway. We can find a way out from there." Just as we began to move, another crash echoed through the corridor, this time accompanied by deep voices, gruff and menacing, calling out, breaches of silence becoming a war cry of urgency. "We know you're in there. Come out now." I looked into the woman's desperate, wide eyes. "Trust me," I urged, and without giving her a chance to reply, I ushered her toward the back door, my pulse thrumming like a war drum in my ears. My sister followed closely behind, her presence offering a fragile tether, a sudden sense of unity that hadn't been present until now. With every footstep echoing against the slick linoleum floor, I caught glimpses of the past colliding with the present, old skeletons rattling, secrets clawing for the surface, and the dawning realization that our tangled histories had become a tempest in this moment. As we reached the door, I paused, my heart pounding as the distant voices grew closer. With every ounce of strength, I pushed the door open, the whole world crashing in. Standing there, in the hazy dusk, facing the unknown, I felt the weight of everything pressing against our fragile alliance. This was just the beginning, and as I glanced back one last time, feeling the desperation wrapped tightly around us, a haunting voice echoed in my mind. "We're coming for you." The words reverberated, leaving me shaken and suddenly aware that our fight for safety had only just begun and that the real threat might be closer than we could ever imagine. The alley was a dim corridor, cluttered with trash bags and the stench of neglect that clung to the surroundings like a bad memory. I squeezed through, forcing the door shut behind us, and the heavy thud resonated with an unbearable finality. My heart was racing fear, adrenaline, and the pulsing weight of my own uncertainties clawed at my throat, leaving little room for rational thought. "Where do we go now?" the woman whispered, her voice a thin thread dangling over an abyss. She gripped her son tighter, shielding him as if the very act of holding him could safeguard him from whatever storm was brewing just beyond the alley's exit. The child, sensing the tension, looked between his mother and me with wide, innocent eyes. I wished I could erase his fear with a single smile, but the weight of reality weighed heavily upon us. I glanced at my sister. "We need to find shelter. Somewhere we can regroup and figure this out. Maybe there's an old warehouse nearby," she replied, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. "It might offer some protection at least for a little while." "A warehouse?" the woman asked, skepticism coloring her tone. "You think that's safer than here?" "It's better than standing in an open alley," I countered, hoping to inject a sense of urgency into the moment. "We don't have much time." Without waiting for an answer, I turned and began to lead the way, prioritizing speed over caution. As we skulked through the dark, the weight of our collective grief and confusion hung heavy in the air. I could hear my sister's footsteps behind me, a grounding presence amid the chaos, while the mother and her child lagged just a few steps behind, their quiet breaths echoing the weight of countless battles fought and lost. We navigated through a maze of crates and shadows until we finally stumbled across the warehouse. Its crumbling exterior felt like a sanctuary compared to the chaos outside. I pushed the heavy door open, a painful creak breaking the stagnant air, and we entered, the darkness enveloping us like a shroud. "Is it safe?" the woman asked again as we gathered, producing a small beam of a flashlight from her pocket. It illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air and revealed the worn beams above us, the walls adorned with peeling paint and stories of old. "Safer than being out there," I assured her, yet even I could feel the doubts creeping back in. I caught my sister's eye, and we exchanged a quiet acknowledgement of the peril we were still embroiled in. Just then, the child whimpered, drawing our attention. "Mom, I'm scared." The mother crouched down, her expression softening despite the hard lines of fear etching her features. "I know, baby, but we're together, and that's what matters, right? We're safe here." She wrapped her arms around him, a fortress of protection forged in love and desperation. "I'm sorry for the mess we're in," I said hesitantly, unsure if I was addressing her or the boy. If there was a way I could take away this fear and uncertainty, I trailed off, feeling the weight of words left unsaid. "Nothing can take this away," she said firmly, but her eyes softened as she met my gaze. "But I appreciate you trying, and you shouldn't have to bear this alone while we're figuring this out." A fleeting moment of connection crossed between us, a shared understanding of an unseen burden, two strangers bound by the shared weight of history, fear, and a common fight for survival. There was kindness in her acceptance, even against the backdrop of the chaos that loomed over us. "Look," I said suddenly, attempting to shift from our dire situation, "we need to focus. Our first priority is finding a way out, a plan because we know they're looking for us." The air turned heavy with silence, the weight of our thoughts inching toward the unacknowledged fears lurking in the shadows. "What about your mother?" the woman said, her voice suddenly laced with concern. "What she wrote in that letter, it was about family, right? What does it mean for us?" Before I could answer, a loud crash echoed from the entrance of the warehouse, the unmistakable sound of footsteps shuffling through debris, deep and gruff voices calling out that sent chills tracing down my spine. "They're here." Panic surged like ice through my veins, igniting our collective fear anew. I pressed against a high window, peering through the grime, searching desperately for any sign of an escape. My heart raced as reality gnawed at me. Not only did we need to stay hidden, but now we had to confront the very demons that had pulled our lives toward this intersection. "Hide," I whispered urgently, pushing my sister and the woman toward the stacks of crates as I scanned the dark expanse of the warehouse. They vanished into the shadows just as the door swung open with a metallic clang. Two figures emerged, shadows stretching ominously across the floor. I froze behind a pile of crates, adrenaline coursing through me as I strained to hear their voices. "Search every inch," the first man ordered, his voice as rough as sandpaper. "If they're here, they won't get away again." My heart stopped. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that the darkness could cloak us one last time. The fabric of our lives was woven tighter together in that momentous patchwork of shared fears, silent cries, and an unwavering quest for safety. Little did I know, the revelation that followed would unearth deeper connections and truths that would bring our lives spiraling toward an unimagined climax. With each passing second, I could feel the threads of our fate tightening, and the remarkable intertwining of our destinies hinted at a storm that none of us were truly prepared for. Then, amid the hushed breaths and the dangerously close footsteps, a voice called out from behind me, a shaky, familiar voice that shouldn't have been here. "Help someone, please." The world tilted on its axis, and I turned slowly, the fear dancing in my heart as I came face to face with a shocking figure, a person I never thought I would see again. My breath hitched in my throat, and all the fragile hope I'd been nurturing shattered like glass, leaving only a fragmented reflection of the uncertain battle still ahead. The voice echoed in the grimy warehouse, a desperate plea that sent ice through my veins. I turned to face a figure shrouded in the shadows, their silhouette barely discernible against the dim light filtering through cracks in the wall. Recognition washed over me, flooding my senses with a wave of disbelief and turmoil. "Jaden?" I finally choked out, my voice trembling at the edges. My heart thudded violently against my ribcage, caught between disbelief and an avalanche of memories. How could he be here, in this forsaken place? How long had it been since I'd last seen him, just a boy then, now transformed into this harbinger of sorrow? "Please, help me," he murmured again, and I noticed the way his hands shook, stained with dirt and perhaps something darker fear. He stepped closer, his eyes wild and pained, darting toward the sounds of our pursuers. "They're coming for me. You thought I was free. What are you doing here?" My voice came out sharper than intended, but how could I hold back the torrent of questions threatening to drown us both? Just as I recognized Jaden, I recognized the crushing reality of our situation. We were all bound together in an insurmountable chaos, desperately clinging to the edges of survival that I had to get away. "I can't go back." His breath hitched as he glanced toward the entrance, a fragile hope fighting against the rising tide of despair. "They already found me once. I couldn't let them take me again. But I heard voices, and I thought you could help." His admission tore through my heart like a blade. The boy I once knew had grown into a young man, trapped by dark shadows I couldn't begin to understand. "Of course, they'll help you," I said with determination, but internally, I wrestled with the grimness of the situation. 3 lives were at stake, each tethered by anguish and haunted pasts. I gestured for Jaden to keep quiet as I turned to the others, their expressions mirroring mine, fear and hope colliding in a silent wrestling match. "Stay hidden," I instructed, attempting to infuse my voice with authority despite how uncertainty twisted my insides. "We need to wait until." A loud crash interrupted, sending vibrations through the floor as another shadow lurked closer. "Did you hear that?" one of the men said impatiently, stumbling over debris. My heart raced, and I knew time was slipping through our fingers like grains of sand. "Follow me," I whispered urgently to Jaden as I led him to the back of the warehouse. "We might be able to slip out through the side door." As I moved, the weight of my sister's gaze felt like a tether, grounding me amidst the chaos. "What about the others?" she mouthed silently, panic rising in her eyes. "If we can get out, we can regroup outside," I whispered back, heart pounding. "Just trust me." Jaden nodded, the fear in his eyes overshadowed by a flicker of hope, and together we inched toward the exit, the distant shouts from our pursuers echoing like a storm in the distance. But as we reached for the doorknob, something heavy landed against the door behind us. The clamor of footsteps surged. They were drawing nearer. "Get down," I hissed, throwing my body against Jaden to shield him. The wooden door shuddered as someone pressed against it, their voices a low growl of malevolent intent. "Damn it, they'll never escape," one of them sneered ominously. "Let's smoke them out. What are they going to do?" Jaden replied, his voice barely a whisper. "Are they going to burn us out?" I couldn't answer him. The very suggestion sent a jolt of panic through me, flooding my mind with images of flames and chaos. There was no time for fear, only survival. I turned to my sister, who stood frozen in place, but a flicker of determination ignited in her eyes as she stepped forward, her hand clutching a heavy rusted pipe she had found earlier, We can't let them take us, she said fiercely, her voice escalating with urgency. We have to fight back. But beneath her bravado lingered the harsh truth. Our fighting chance was dwindling, and every moment felt like a countdown to despair. What will we do? I asked, my heart hammering in my chest. Looking back at Jaden, I saw the desperation rising in his eyes, one moment away from drowning in terror. Then, as the men outside shouted commands, the structure shuddered with force as something collided against the door, almost buckling under the pressure. Run! I shouted. With one swift motion, I pushed through the side exit, dragging Jaden and my sister through the tight opening. The air outside was liberating, but we could hear their shouts and footsteps bounding behind only momentary reprieve. Where do we go now? My sister shouted as we sprinted across the overgrown lot beside the warehouse. Fear fueled our movements, but uncertainty clawed at the edges of our determination, suffocating hope with each step. Anywhere but here, I gasped, scanning the shadows for any sign of refuge as Jaden kept pace beside me, breathless and exhilarated. But just as I thought we might evade capture, a blinding light swept across the ground, illuminating our path in stark contrast to the dark. Stop! We have you surrounded. I realized too late that we had stumbled directly into a trap, the silhouettes of our pursuers emerging like demons in the night. My heart sank as their triumphant laughter cut through the evening air, harvesting the remnants of our hope. Panic seized me, but before I could react, I heard another familiar voice, one I hadn't expected, breaking through the din of chaos. There you are? I've been looking everywhere for you. Wheels turned inside my mind, fear spiraling into an unexpected revelation. My eyes widened as I caught a glimpse of an outstretched hand in the shadows. Was I ready for the truth I so desperately wanted but feared more than anything? Mom. The disbelief washed over me like ice water. She was standing there, her figure taking shape in the glow of the blinding light, a mirage of a past I thought was buried forever. Mom. I echoed, my voice quivering with a cocktail of emotions: shock, hope, confusion. The last time I saw her, the whispers of abandonment echoed in our home like a haunting refrain. Get down, she shouted, her voice a roar against the chaos, snapping me back to the urgency of our situation. But there she was, so real, yet so entwined in my fears. My heart raced. Did everyone know where I was? Were the shadows finally converging into a nightmare that wouldn't let me escape even for a moment? Mom, I thought you were gone. I thought, I sputtered, disbelief replacing fear for just a moment, rendering me speechless in front of the ghost of my past. Less talking, more running. She barked. There was a fierceness in her eyes that I couldn't ignore, an instinct born from the years she had spent battling her demons. And I was reminded that she had fought against the very shadow now hunting us. Wrapped in the memories that clung like shadows to her skin, that I hesitated. I needed clarity, but fear propelled me forward. She waved us over, urgency fueling her movements. This way. I've got a car nearby. I turned back to Jaden and my sister, grappling with the shock of the situation while the darkness behind us loomed larger than ever. This was not just about survival. This was about confronting a past I had buried deep within me. That we need to go, I shouted, rallying them as adrenaline surged through my veins once more. The familiar sound of pounding footsteps brought chaos back into focus, and I could feel the breath of danger hovering just above us. Jaden trailed behind me, his gaze fixated on my mother like an anchor keeping him grounded. Your mother? He asked, astonishment spilling from him as he took hesitant steps toward her. The connection forged in our desperate escape felt fragile suddenly, teetering on the brink of collapse. I didn't know you had not now, I snapped, urgency lacing my tone, fearful that the break in our pace would cost us the precious seconds we desperately needed. I could feel the shadows pressing in around us, the tangible danger coiling tighter with each moment we raced toward the side of the warehouse where she indicated, the breath of desperation fueling our steps, and I dared to see into her eyes again. How did you find us? I gasped, struggling to comprehend the currents swirling through our lives. Like branches swept away in a torrential storm. It doesn't matter right now, Mom said, the no-nonsense edge to her voice a knife through the confusion. It felt as if so much had been left unsaid, yet she carried a weight of unspoken truths. We need to make sure you get out alive. They're dangerous more than you realized. In those sharp moments between fear and flight, I thought of all the times I had longed for her, felt abandoned, haunting echoes of her absence swirling through the void of my adolescence. And yet here she was, fighting, surviving, and perhaps even offering the protection I craved. I could feel resentment fighting with relief in my heart, conflicting emotions cascading around me like an unrelenting tide. "Get in," Mom urged, pointing to the car that sat waiting at the far end of the alley, a beacon of hope glinting under the sparse glow of lamp-post light. I glanced back, panic spiking in my gut as I realized time was slipping away, panic settling over us like a storm cloud that we lunged toward the car, its presence tangible, a sanctuary even in the chaos. I threw open the back door, and as we all climbed in, my sister reached for Jaden's hand, a moment of connection brimming with memories of lost childhood innocence. "Go, go," I shouted, panic coursing through each breath. My mother sped down the access road, tires screeching against the asphalt as gravel kicked up behind us, a cruel reminder of the chase that still lingered behind. The distance between us and our pursuers widened, yet the throbbing ache in my heart reminded me of the dangers still lurking on the horizon. "Who are they?" Jaden asked, his voice barely breaking through the cacophony of roaring engines and relentless pounding in my ears. "Old family ties," Mom replied sharply, her tone sharp and bold, laden with untold histories. "And they hunt for blood they think is theirs. You need to understand. This is bigger than us, echoed in my mind, wrapping around me like a suffocating fog. "What do you mean?" I pushed back. But any further questions were drowned out by the rush of wind against the car as we barreled down lonely roads, notes of horror creeping into my mind. "They'll explain everything when we're safe," she said. Determination colored her expression. And in that moment, what we were facing felt monumental, each twist of fate tightening the bonds we'd yet to fully understand. With every calculated turn, I held on to the fading hope that we weren't trapped in an endless cycle of doom and darkness. I stole a glance at my sister, her expression drawn tight as she remained stealing the ground beneath us. "You okay?" she asked Jaden, her voice gently probing, and I could see the way she embraced this fragile connection like a lifeline. He nodded, but unease flickered across his features. "Two just want to know what's happening. My mother shot us a glance, eyes fierce. "We'll figure that out together. If we survive this." Her words hung between us, heavy and pressing, and just when the darkness felt most consuming, a sliver of light pierced through the weight of our fears, reminding me that we had each other. Each beat of our hearts echoing the pulse of hope, binding us together in a chaotic harmony that thrummed through the car like an ancient rhythm. "Where are we going?" I asked, doubt mingling with a hint of curiosity entwined with anxiety. Perhaps understanding what was ahead would allow me to piece together the fragmented stories that intertwined our fates. "To a place where we'll know for sure we can be safe until we decide our next steps." My mother's response slipped through fragile spaces where light had yet to reach, casting shadows against our collective fears. "What does that mean?" My sister pressed, unease palpable as we all shared glances infused with questions hovering just below the surface. "It means," Mom hesitated, her voice softening, like a whisper carrying the weight of absolute truth. "It means we may uncover the past, face it together, and perhaps," she glanced at my sister through the rearview mirror, "perhaps we can create something different, a new path that's wholly ours." The enormity of her words hung in the air, a fragile flame flickering amid the chaos. Could we find forgiveness in the complicated tapestry of our entwined lives? Could we truly step away from the shadows that had haunted us for so long? With determination coursing through my veins, I clutched Jaden's arm, our shared breaths a silent promise that no matter the darkness ahead, we would emerge together, eyes wide open, ready to confront the truths that lay entrenched within our fates. Just then, as bravado began to stitch up the tears of our tumultuous past, a familiar sound reverberated, a faint song drifting through the car's open windows. An anthem of hope and resilience emerged in the air, and I realized at that moment the light we'd been searching for was already within us, a kindling against the shadows we now faced. In that instant, the realization struck me fiercely. Our story, tangled, complex, And Echoing Shadows was not a tale of despair, but a shared journey towards redemption. We held within us the ability to rewrite our destinies with each heartbeat, facing the chaos ahead with a newfound resolution. And as we drove through the darkened streets, laughter mixed with tears bridged the space between our collective souls. Whatever happens, I promise I won't let you go again, I told her softly, knowing all the love I held, all the prosthetic memories I created with the hope they would never fade away. In that moment, we became a family reborn, standing side by side against the tides of unforgiving shadows as the car sped down the road. Leaving the past behind, I took a deep breath that convinced me. This was only the beginning, and together, we would forge our path forward, a melody rising above the storms as we took on whatever awaited us with brave, unyielding hearts. And as the night embraced us, one unwavering truth prevailed: we're no longer shadows. We were light bound together by woven hearts, determined to find the dawn even when faced with the darkest of nights.